It has a parametric sketching environment like SolidWorks. It has the ability to import and modify non-native files in an advanced way like Creo. It uses keyboard hotkeys like FreeCAD. But unlike any major 3D CAD suite, this program, OnShape, is done completely within a web browser. This unique suite is able to do everything on the cloud, including store your files. With this platform, you're able to sweep, revolve, extrude, create assemblies and drawings, all on the cloud. That means no license keys, no installations, you don't need to have fancy hardware, and it plugs into ERP systems very easily. Today I want to go over the very basic OnShape for an absolute beginner. If you have previous CAD experience, that is great, but please watch indulgently as I will cover this for absolute CAD beginners as well. This is the home screen when you sign in to an OnShape account, and you can view recently opened documents, things that you've created, things that were shared to you, public documents, and you can go back to My OnShape to view the general view. This is wonderful for collaborating within a company. To actually start creating a document, you simply come here and say Create and choose Document. We'll make this a tutorial, and now we'll begin to load the workspace. As we've discussed before, we will be covering the main topics of getting started with OnShape if you've never modeled before. And to start off with, OnShape begins to model parts using sketches, as does any other major CAD program. The sketching environment in OnShape is remarkably similar to that of SolidWorks or FreeCAD or Creo or any other suite. And so once you begin to learn the principles of one, the others come easier. You are given 3 different planes, the front, right, and top plane. What you begin to sketch on really doesn't matter very much. They all act the same way. This just depends on how you want to orient your part. The main reason why you would want to choose the front plane more than the right or top plane or any other plane to sketch on is because if you sketch on the front plane, you want the front of your part to be on this view. So if I get normal to this view by right-clicking and saying View Normal To, I would want to be looking at the front of the part that I've made. Likewise, if I choose the top plane and View Normal To, I would want to be looking at the top of my part right now. Likewise, if I choose the right plane and say View Normal To, I'd be wanting to look at the side of my part. So it all depends on how you arbitrarily wish to orient your part. Looking up here in this corner, you have certain views. I can choose the right face, which I'm looking at right now, or I can choose a corner of this cube, and that gives me a 3D isometric view. From here I can click on the front if I want to view the front, or I can click on the top, or vice versa. If I choose the right plane and want to view it from the other side, I can click in this gray area, and it will switch to the other side for me. So that's how we can navigate our views quite easily, simply by right-clicking and saying View Normal To, or using this view navigation tool over here. So as I said before, we will be sketching to create parts. And to do that, I simply choose a plane to sketch on, and since this is a tutorial, I will arbitrarily choose the front plane. And to begin a sketch, I will click on this sketch button with the front plane highlighted as such. Great, now that I'm on the front plane, I'll simply turn my view so that I'm facing the front plane directly. Notice my toolbar up here has changed with the number of tools. These are, as you guessed, specifically sketching related tools. Let's go through them one by one. I have a line tool right here. So I can click on this to start sketching a line. And as I said before, where all the planes meet is our origin. This becomes very important when we sketch because all dimensions that we sketch ultimately relate back to the origin. So with my line tool highlighted, I can click on the origin or anywhere else, and I can click in any arbitrary point. This is known as a polyline in some CAD systems, where the minute I finish drawing a line, it is ready to draw another line. And so I can make any general profile that I wish. And when I close the profile, you'll see I have a light shading saying that I'm working with a closed profile on my sketch now. Now notice this line is black where these lines are blue. That's for a decent reason, and allow me to go into explaining why some are black and some are blue. To get rid of that sketch, I simply click and drag my mouse to highlight, and I hit the delete key, and that will delete any entities that are selected when I highlight them by clicking and dragging. Now if I highlight my line tool again, I click on the origin. If I go to horizontal, you'll see that little white box come up, that with a little horizontal black line. That means that no matter what will happen, OnShape will keep this line horizontal. So it turns black because OnShape says, I know this line needs to be horizontal, but it does not know where this blue tip should end. Should it be this long? Should it be this long? Should it be this long? OnShape doesn't know. So the things that OnShape doesn't know where it should be placed, it's blue, and if OnShape has it constrained, it is black. In this case, the line is constrained to be horizontal. If I draw another line, notice OnShape doesn't know what angle this line should be, and so the whole line is blue, but the tip of the line is black right here. Furthermore, I can draw a line just like that, and OnShape doesn't know where the line should start or end, nor does it know what angle it should be. So it doesn't know anything about this line, and the whole thing is blue. So let's say I want to tell OnShape how long I want this line. Well, to do that, I can go to my dimensioning tool, and that's this button right here, dimension. I can click on this tool and click on the line, and then I can click once more and I can type in a number. I want this line to be 2.5 inches long. Now the tip turns black, or what we say, we have a fully constrained sketch because everything is black. That means OnShape knows exactly where all the elements of the sketch belong. That is when you have no blue. And that's the end goal of making a sketch, is to have it completely black. At least in OnShape. Maybe other CAD suites use other colors, but SolidWorks and OnShape use black to say that they're fully constrained. So if we're pretty good at drawing lines now, I can draw another line starting at the end and coming up here. And again, it has a vertical constraint. When I highlight the line, you can see my vertical constraint right here. If I don't want this line to be vertical, I can simply highlight this and push the delete button, and it deletes that vertical constraint. If I draw this line at an angle and wish to make it vertical or horizontal, I can come right here and choose one of these two, horizontal or vertical, and it will assign that constraint. So with these lines, now I can choose a 3-point arc. Notice there's a drop-down menu, so there's a few different options with these arcs, but 3-point is probably the most common. And what I do when I want to draw an arc, in fact, I will maybe make another line. I can draw a 3-point arc to make it kind of a round profile on the top. So I'll start by making an arc starting on this point, and then I'm going to click where I want the arc to end, perhaps here. And then my third point determines how concave I want this arc to be. I can make this flat, almost like a line, or I can make this very exaggerated, almost like a half circle, or I can go way large and make a very large arc if I wanted to. So I just choose an intermediate point in between to determine what kind of concavity I want to work with. Excellent. Now there are certain constraints and relations that I can make in this sketch that can help OnShape fully constrain this sketch so that everything is black. With any sketch, if I don't know where these elements should end up, I can always grab on something blue, click and drag, And I can see, okay, I can see where the sketch is able to move around. This line should be told how long it needs to be. So there are certain constraints, or what we would say relations, that can help with that. I can highlight this line, and I can highlight this line, and I can choose equal right here. And by clicking on this, I am telling OnShape that this line and this line should be an equal length. I'd like to do the same over here, so I can choose this line and equal. And whatever I choose will become equal. Finally, I would like to make it so that this arc is tangent with this line. And if I know if the arc is tangent over here, the relations will make it tangent over here as well, because the center of this arc is constrained to the center of my sketch. So I can highlight this arc and this line, and I can choose tangent, which is this tool right here. Tangent. And now we have a fully constrained sketch. Perhaps I might change my mind later and wish that this arc was not tangent. In that case, I can highlight this arc, and I can look for this tangent relation and delete it. And now again, I am no longer tangent. Perhaps I'd rather give this arc a specified radius. I can do that again by going to my dimension tool, which is over here, and clicking on the arc. Now I can type in a certain radius. I can say I want this to have a radius of 2 inches. And it gives me a radius of 2 inches. So far we have covered lines and 3-point arcs. And we've covered relations such as equal and tangent, horizontal and vertical. Let's look at a few other relations that may be useful. Perhaps I wish to go with a little bit more of a complex geometry. I don't want this to be constrained to be horizontal, and perhaps I don't want this to be constrained to be vertical. So I'll delete the horizontal and vertical relations. From here I can see that there's a horizontal constraint on this point, so I'll get rid of that. And now I can move this line however I wish. I can establish a relationship of angles between these lines instead of regular dimensions or horizontal or vertical constraints. So to make an angle, I go again to my dimension tool and I choose this line, and it gives, whoops, I didn't actually click on that line. So again, I'll choose my dimension tool and I'll choose this line and this line. And it gives me an angle. Right now they're currently at 111 degrees. Maybe we'll make this an even 110. And perhaps no matter what angle I want this line to be, I want this one to be 90 degrees apart. Indeed, I can use my smart dimension and just pull 90 degrees apart. But there's a relation that can help us have a cleaner sketch. And that is I can select both of these lines and choose perpendicular right here. And when I do that, the sketch makes sure to hold these lines at 90 degrees. And I can change this angle to say 70 degrees, and it keeps them again at 90 degrees. So that is angle and perpendicular relations. Finally, I can add a third line into the mix. Maybe I can make this 110 degrees again. Perhaps I'll make these lines unequal. And I can get rid of this equal. Perhaps I may want to, for some reason, make sure that this line is always parallel to this line. I can do that by simply saying parallel. And no matter what happens, these lines will always remain parallel no matter what I do to the sketch. So I can bring this back to 70 degrees. And now I have the freedom to make this line whatever distance I want. So there are some of the principal and most important sketching tools. One last one that will come in handy is simply to be able to fix one point onto another point. So I've got my origin right here, which is a point, and I have this point, which is the point at the end of a line. If I want to rest this point on the origin, I certainly can click and drag, and I get a coincident relation right here. So fixing one point onto another is coincident. Now I can delete this coincident relation and show you one other way to make things coincident. I can simply select the end of the line and the origin and click on coincident up here. With that being said, we've learned lines and 3-point arcs. There's another sketch tool that can be very useful, and that is a circle. I can simply draw a circle from the center and click on an arbitrary point to choose the size of the circle. And then I can click on my dimension, click on the outer edge of the circle, and give it a size with my keyboard. And the dimension will make sure that it stays at the same size, or we can fully constrain the circle. Likewise, another tool that will prove to be useful is that of a rectangle. I simply click one corner and click the other corner. And just like with lines, I can choose my dimension and assign whatever dimensions I wish to my rectangle. Say a 2x4 rectangle. So let's go ahead and with these newly acquired sketch skills, let's sketch a simple part, perhaps a flange. And as we sketch this flange, I can go through a few other techniques as well, particularly that of construction geometry, which is right here. I'll go ahead and start by making a 3-hole flange. Notice when I draw a circle, I have my vertical relation that pops up relative to the origin. So as I draw the circle, I know that no matter what I manipulate the circle with, it will remain vertical to the origin. I'll give this a diameter of 1/2 of an inch. Now I can give this a certain distance away from the origin. Let's say I want it to be 1 inch from the origin. Perhaps I'll be a bit more generous and say 3 inches from the origin. It's an arbitrary flange after all. Now, there are several ways to do the other 2 holes. Let's say I want to have 2 holes and each are 120 degrees apart or equally spaced. For this example, I will use construction geometry. I can put a line right here, and I can put another line right here, and I accidentally drew that line, so I'll get rid of it. I can put another line right here. And to ensure that these circles are 120 degrees apart, I can use the angle 120 degrees apart and 120 degrees apart. Now I also want my circles to be equally far away from the origin. So instead of making each circle 3 inches, I can use a relation to select all 3 lines and say equal. Finally, I can continue drawing my other 2 circles, and likewise I can select all circles and choose equal. There is one problem. These lines will be recognized with the sketch, and we want these circles to count, but these lines, their only purpose is to position the circles in the right way. And so if we don't tell OnShape that these are only for positioning in geometry and they shouldn't take part in the finished flange, there's no part of the flange that's going to have some feature that goes straight out and ends in the middle of the circle, then we'll have some problems down the road. So we want to tell OnShape that these are for construction or geometry only, because they're only here to position these circles. So I'm going to click on this button right here, Construction. And when I do that, they become dotted. And that's to say that OnShape recognizes these only for position, and it will ignore them when we actually make the part. If you're confused about that, stay tuned and I'll show you what I mean. I'll finish by making a hole in the center of this flange, and I'll give it a dimension. Again, rather arbitrary dimension. Four inches is fine. And now I want to make the outer surface of my flange. I'll choose a 3-point arc. And let's say I want this 3-point arc to match this circle. In order to do that, I need a new constraint that we haven't yet covered, cocentric. A cocentric relation will make sure that the center point of this arc and the center point of this circle are the same. Notice when I draw a 3-point arc, I have this center point right here that the arc can move around. If I were to draw this on paper, I would put one end of a protractor on this point, another end right here, and trace around. So that's how this arc center works. And so to get this center in with the center of this circle, I certainly can highlight this center and use my cocentric, or my coincident rather. But to use cocentric, I simply highlight the arc and the circle and choose cocentric. And notice now, no matter what I do with this sketch, they will always share the same circle. So I can use coincident or cocentric, both will work. I'll go ahead and finish up drawing some dimensions and elements of this sketch. I'll give this a dimension. When working with cocentric relations, a dimension can give me a certain wall thickness right here. And so I can say I want a wall thickness of 0.35 inches. Now I can do the same, and I can do I certainly can draw another arc here and another arc here, but that's a little bit time consuming. And so OnShape has a certain feature that can help speed up this process. I can click on the down arrow and choose circular pattern, and this creates patterns around a circle. So to do a circular pattern, I click here. And then I choose what entities I wish to pattern. I choose to pattern this arc. And then when I'm done, I can simply double click and it gives me these patterned entities. These I can go ahead and get rid of these construction lines that were added in during the pattern. Notice I have a center, almost like an arc center of my pattern, and I want to make sure that my center is with the center of whatever I want to revolve around. In this case, I want to revolve around this circle, and so I click, and I choose coincident. From here, I can add in the relations of cocentric. And the other one, because it has a pattern constraint, knows where to go when I position this one. Now these arcs are also equal radius, and so all I'm going to do is run a straight line from feature to feature. Now, I want to have a certain level of being tangent, and so I'll choose this arc and this line, and choose tangent. Same over here. Oh, and when it turns red, it means I've added too many constraints, and it cannot be solved. So I simply hit Control Z, like zebra, and that helps to solve everything. So, how else can I fully constrain this sketch without over-constraining this sketch? In this case, I'll probably go from this arc over here and try tangent. I notice I'm certainly not tangent here. So since I notice that this is not tangent, I'll simply go to this line and make it horizontal to fully constrain my sketch. I notice that this wall is getting a little bit thin because I'm going to have a hole here and the end wall here, so I'm going to make this a little bit larger of a wall thickness. So I'm going to go with 0.5 inches, and that looks a little bit more reasonable. I notice I've got one single blue point, but I cannot click and drag it anywhere, and so it appears to be a minor graphics error that it says we're not fully constrained, but we actually are. I'm going to extrude this now. So there are several ways to create solids from sketches. Assuming that we have a sketch that we're happy with, I can click the green check saying I am all done with this sketch. And now I've got this dormant sort of gray sketch that I can work with features. Notice these are all the features that I have, and this is the default menu in OnShape. This is the menu that you see when you first log in before you hit the sketch button. I'm going to click on the extrude button, and I'll click my sketch, and notice it gives me a little preview of what my solid is going to look like. It's saying that it's going to extrude at 1 inch deep. If extrude is a foreign word, it simply means I'm going to take whatever the sketch is and push the solid out. So you can see we've got our sketch in orange, and it is pushing the solid out of the plane of the sketch. And that's how we can make our solid. I think 0.375 is a fine dimension for a flange like that. And there's several options with extrusions as well. I can do a 10-inch extrusion if I want to, and notice I am coming out of this plane 10 inches from one direction. What if I want this plane in the middle? I can instead of choosing blind, which means that I'm coming out only one side of the sketch, I can click on the drop down and choose something like symmetric, which means I am extruding symmetrically 5 inches on each side of the plane. One other feature about blind, if I prefer to do a blind, is that I can always extrude from this side instead of this side by clicking on these arrows, which signify go the opposite direction. There are other features, up to next, up to face, up to part, up to vertex, and through all, and those are related to extruding if you've already created a solid. So as of right now, with our first sketch, blind and symmetric are the best options. I'll choose a symmetric extrusion, and again at 0.375 inches. And now we have a solid. I can view this from the top, from the front, or from the side. I also can create my custom view by pushing down. If I have a mouse with a scrolling wheel on it, I can push straight down on that scrolling wheel and then right click. There we go. And I can adjust my view however I wish. And I'll simply right click to exit that view and choose the front again. I can choose several other ways to create solids as well, and they will require different sketches. So I'm going to delete this sketch that I used to create my solid and extrude errors out. I've got a red feature in the history tree. It says it did not regenerate properly, and select a sketch or a face to extrude from. Because I deleted the sketch, it doesn't have a sketch to extrude from, so it's an empty feature. Thus, I'll delete it as well. Perhaps I want to create a ring of some kind, perhaps an industrial ring. To do that, I will sketch again. Oops, and I accidentally edited my sketch, so I can simply come to my history tree on the left and choose Edit to get back in. I'll choose my front plane to sketch again, and now I'm ready to go. Let's say I want to make perhaps not very realistic to real life feature, but I can choose this polygon. a five-sidegon as I sometimes call them. And I put my mouse right so that I have that horizontal constraint already selected, and I'll draw my polygon. As you can see, I can choose how many sides I want to have simply by moving my mouse. I'll choose a polygon as I think it's kind of a fun shape. I'll hit escape to get out of that tool, and then I can make this horizontal. All of these lines are of equal length to one another, so if I put a dimension on one, all of them will have that same dimension. So I'll choose a dimension and make it, say, 1 inch long. Now, how far away do I want this to be from my origin? I'll choose another dimension. From the center to the origin, let's say I want to have 6 inches. And I am fully constrained. Now I can add another line, and if I know I want to draw a construction line, I can click this button and click on a line and automatically draw a construction line without having to change it later. This line is of unknown length, so I will arbitrarily make this even with the top of the part by choosing horizontal. And we're fully constrained with everything black. Now, since I want to make a ring or a circular feature, I can simply say take this profile and move it all the way around a 6-inch radius around my origin, because I have a dimension of 6 inches here, and add material as I go. To put this in action, I'll complete my sketch and choose Revolve. Revolve is what will create those features and rings that I wish. It asks me faces and sketch regions to revolve. I want to revolve this sketch, and it's asking me what axis to revolve around. So to choose the axis, I click in this box and choose my sketch. Now, I simply click the green check, and I have a polygon revolved all the way around this axis. So I can make any profile that I want to and have it be revolved. If I wish to create another kind of solid that perhaps is a little bit more exciting than just going in a circle, there are certainly options available for me. What I'll do now is, again, delete my previous sketches. And now I will sketch again on my front plane. Right click, normal to sketch plane. And I'm going to make another polygon. This time maybe 6 sides sounds pretty good. And I'll make this horizontal, of course. And perhaps I'll stay with my dimension of 1 inch. Now perhaps I want to do the same thing, right? I want to follow along a path, but I don't want that path to be a circle. I want it to be another shape or another geometry. So I'll simply exit my sketch and I'll choose my top plane. If you can see, I've got my top plane selected. I'll sketch on this plane now. And I'm going to create an arbitrary line, and I'll choose this and the origin, and I will choose a coincident relation. Now I can give this a distance. Say 5 inches. And I can make this a 3-point arc. Choose the arc, choose the line, and choose tangent. And I'll give this a radius. Now as we sketch, it's worth mentioning that there are many keyboard shortcuts. If I want to put a dimension on this arc, I don't necessarily have to click on this button. You can see in parentheses I have the letter D, like delta. So if I push the keyboard letter D, you can see it gives me the dimension tool already. And so that's another option. I can give this a dimension, say 3 inches, so I'm going to go around a 3-inch radius. From here, to simplify, I'll right-click and view normal to sketch plane. maybe I'll go 90 degrees. So to make sure that this is 90 degrees, I'll highlight the end point and the center point of the arc and make them horizontal. Oops, I meant horizontal. I think I clicked vertical there. So I must be viewing this sideways. I'll simply make these vertical. And we have a 90-degree angle. From here, I can choose perhaps another line. And for demonstration purposes, I'll stop there. I hit the D key and choose 5 inches. So what we're going to do is take this profile, and instead of going around in a circle around an axis, I'll have it follow this path instead. To do that, I will choose the sweep button, choose this profile, click on the path, and choose this path. Notice it only recognized that 3-point arc as a path, and so what I can do is choose this line, and then this line, and then this line. And then I simply hit the green check, and I've made a sweep. Now for any feature, whether it be an extrusion, a revolve, a sweep, or anything else, one of the largest features of parametric modeling is just that. It's parametric. We model around parameters. And should we want to redesign, we can always go back and make a change. So here's my history tree of everything that I've done on this particular part. I've created a sketch, which is what is highlighted in orange. I've created a path, which is also highlighted in orange. And then I've created the sweep. If I wish to edit my sketches, I can find my path. Let's say I want to edit my path. I can right click and choose edit. And now I'm back in my sketching environment. Let's say I want to make this 10 inches. Now that I'm done, I can click the green check and we've built it into a new parameter. And again, this is applicable to extrusions or any other sketch. This looks like a very giant Allen key. I can also, of course, edit my sweep itself, but there's not much to edit here. So this looks good. I can also, let's say if I want to view this part without these planes, I can go to my tree and find my top plane and just click on the eye, which will hide that plane. And I can hide all of my planes if I so desire. I can simply bring them back by clicking the eye again. So with OnShape, we have covered extrusions, revolves, sweeps. Perhaps a little bit more advanced is loft. And lofts are very useful features that can produce a lot more organic geometry. It can help to reference other planes than our front, top, and right plane, which we are given by default. So let's go through the loft, and to understand loft a little bit better, I will introduce the planes. Delete, delete, and delete. So with these planes, let's say I want to make a new plane that is the parallel to the front plane, but say 3 or 4 inches out. I can simply click on this plane, and it asks me for entities. I'll choose this as an entity, and I can offset this plane a distance of 4 inches. And of course, like on an extrude, I can click the diagonal arrows to change which side the plane is on. There are several other options where you can choose maybe elements from a sketch to help define a plane as well. This front plane, I can choose the front plane and choose sketch. On this plane, and I will view normal to plane, perhaps I will make a square. Now we've covered a corner-to-corner rectangle. We can also choose a center point rectangle to where the first click I make will be the center of the rectangle, and that makes it easy to center over an origin. I'll choose these two lines and push the E key, E like Edward, to make them equal. And then I can choose the D like Delta key for a dimension, and I'll make this a 3-inch square. And then I'll be done with this sketch. Let me again choose this corner to go trimetric. I can choose this plane and sketch on this plane as well. On this plane, again, I will view normal to sketch. I will draw a circle, push D like delta for dimension, and I'll make this a 3-inch circle. Maybe, to compromise, I'll make it 3.5 inches, and that way I am in half the time and out half the time. And I'll hit the green arrow. Again, I will go trimetric. So let's say I want to make a profile that starts off as a square but slowly morphs into a circle. I can do that with my Loft button. Loft, right here, allows me to choose certain profiles. I will choose this square, and I will choose this circle. And here I gradually move from a square into a circle. And we have successfully lofted. OnShape is very impressive in knowing how to loft straight. Sometimes in other parametric modelers I've had a problem with having the correct alignment. This corner may be curving all the way around here, and this whole thing looks a little bit twisted. Should you ever come across this situation, this is sound advice for any parametric modeler. I'll go back and edit my sketch. So here I have 4 lines going into one circle. Whenever you loft, it is advisable, I would even particularly say regardless of your sketching program, to use the same number of elements. In other words, I have 4 lines, and so in this case I want to use 4 arcs. And that way every line has a place to go and there's no confusion on what should go where. So I'll make these arcs coincident. And I'll make another arc. And I can choose either concentric or coincident, but I'll make all these centers coincident. And now I can choose these points and make them vertical, and I can choose these points and make them horizontal. And I should probably choose a point relative to the center of the circle to help us fully constrain. Excellent. So all of these are vertical and horizontal. Now I simply need to choose a radius. So with my dimension, I'll choose 3.5. And this will be quite large, so we'll divide it by 2 because circles are done by diameter and arcs are done by radius. Finally, I can choose my origin, and I'll choose coincident, and that will fully define our sketch. Now I hit the green check, and Loft says, hey, I don't recognize this. There used to be a circle, now there's arcs. So we can go ahead and edit this. I'll get rid of sketch 2 and click on sketch 2. And there we have a loft. Notice I mistakenly put my points in vertical instead of at 45 degrees. So this is actually my fault, but you can see how you can get some kind of cool organic surfaces from your loft if you so desire, which it really is pretty interesting. Now, let's run with this. Perhaps I want this loft to have a profile that is thinner in the center. It has a little dip. Well, for that, I can use guide curves. Guide curves are a wonderful way of determining what kind of profile that we wish to have. So in order to work with guide curves and make this tutorial a little bit more simple, so you only have to focus on one thing at a time, I'm going to edit this sketch, and I'm going to delete the vertical, and I'm going to delete this horizontal. So now I can begin to adjust where these go. I'll delete this horizontal again, delete this vertical, so all these points are completely loose relative to each other. And now I'll make this and this horizontal by using the H key like hotel. This and this horizontal. I use the V like Victor key, vertical. And we are somewhat fully constrained, but not quite. So in order to finish off, I will simply use construction geometry, and I'll draw a line here and here. And I'll make these lines equal with the E key, and that fully constrains our sketch. Now we'll rebuild, and we have a straight loft again. So if I want to add a profile that can make this perhaps thinner in the middle, I will draw on the right plane. First off, I want to access this before I make the loft, because if I've already made the loft, I can't change it. So I'll drag this bar up one, and that's to show us before the loft has been created. And so if I start sketching now, then I will sketch before the loft. So I'll choose the right plane and sketch. I will view normal to sketch plane. Now I can use a 3-point arc. And one thing, if I want to snap to this plane, I can always do so, and that would be a good idea in this case. I'll choose the end here. I'll choose this and coincident. Then I can choose this very top point of my circle sketch. I don't know if you can see that, but we're choosing the very top point here, and I can choose the end of this line and coincident. And then I can push the D like delta key and put a dimension on my arc. Perhaps a 6-inch radius might be good, or I can be a little bit more dramatic and go with something like 3 inches. Now I can come down here, and I've got an existing sketch that has been made prior to my loft being made. And so I can edit my loft, and right here I can choose guides and continuity. I'll check that box, and it gives me an option to choose a guide curve. I will choose this, and notice I now have an indentation where I didn't have an indentation before. And so using these guide curves can help us define the concavity or the profile of every sketch that we have. So these are some of the basic and core functions of OnShape. There are a few additions that I can add into a solid as well. Perhaps now that I've created everything, I want these edges to be rounded with a fillet. I can choose an edge that I would wish to put a fillet on and simply click the fillet button, and this edge will be rounded out. Notice there's a little bit of displacement due to our profile, and that is normal. I can choose a radius for my fillet, let's say 0.25 or 1/4 inch, and then I can continue to select edges and these fillets can be added. When done, I can click the green check. I can also remove these fillets and add in chamfers. I can put a chamfer on each of these edges. So these are great finishing touches that you can easily add without having to worry about extrude cutting or sketching in. Speaking of extrude cutting, if I want to continue to run with this solid, perhaps, and for visibility's sake I'll hide these planes, I wish to put a hole in the middle. Well, I can certainly return back to my sketches and sketch in a hole, but it would be easier at this point, perhaps, to do the hole now. So I choose this face and I click the sketch button. Or if I wish to exit my sketch, I can also choose this face. There isn't even a plane on this face, but I can choose I guess there is because I created a plane, but I can choose any face that I wish that is perfectly flat and click on the sketch button. Again, the face has to be flat, so I could not sketch on this face, for instance, because there's a big concavity there. But now that I'm sketching on this face, I can put a circle, and I can right-click and view normal to sketch plane, and I can place a circle here. And let's say I want to cut a hole into this part with a circle that has a diameter of 2 inches. Well, now I can do an extrusion, but this time I will remove material. So I'll click my green check, highlight my circle, and choose extrude. Now over here, of course, we've defaulted to a new extrusion, and it's asking me, how far out do I want to go? I simply choose solid and remove. And that's telling it that I want to remove material with this extrusion. So it's asking me what face or sketch region I want to use, and I'll choose this sketch. And now you can see it gives me a preview as to what the removed material would look like. Instead of blind, I can simply say through all. And that will say no matter how long my part is, I will cut through the whole part. You'll probably immediately notice that I have cut a hole in my concaved surface. It comes down so far that it hits the hole that I made. So one thing that I can do is I can change the profile of my guide curve if I don't want that hole, or I can make this circle smaller. I can go into this sketch where I can see the profile that I made, edit, and I can make this more of a 6-inch circle of radius. Now as I rebuild, there's no hole. So again, this is a very quick beginner's crash course in making parts in OnShape. There are many other features that you can begin to learn, features involving extrude, revolve, loft, that we have not covered, that we may cover in some future date if there's enough interest. I hope this is helpful, and as usual, please subscribe, as that's the best way to help me back, and I'll catch you next time.